In this video, you're going to learn about aspects of policing that cannot be ignored in order to have a successful career. My name is Scott Medlin. For years, I worked in law enforcement, and I'm very excited that I'll be joined by JT King. He runs the platform Survive Policing. He worked in law enforcement for 14 years. Let's dive right in. Honesty and moral integrity, because I remember that was actually the first block of instruction we got. If you step into a job where you have a lot of freedom, essentially, and authority, if you don't have a moral compass about you, it can go downhill for you and others very fast. I mean, what do you think?
Certainly anyone that's coming into the job has to have at least a grasp on what their own values are and also understand how that applies to the job itself because you're going to be put in circumstances where you have to make those decisions. Another good example is we used to get like domestic violence calls, and by policy, right, there might be a situation where based on what you can see, you know that there was some physical violence. But based on protocol, based on policy, you can't technically make an arrest, right? So then the decision becomes, okay, well, do you just say, hey, sorry, can't do anything, walk out the door, knowing that whatever happened before is probably going to continue? Or in a lot of cases, do you make someone leave, right? Now, is that necessarily something that was by the book? In some cases, no, but it was the right thing to do. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, there's going to be officers that make those decisions and make what they believe is the right decision, and it doesn't turn out for them. And that's just something that I think everyone that goes in the job has to understand, that it's a tricky business. There's a rule book, but there is no playbook for how to do it effectively 100% of the time. You're going to make mistakes. They want you to be perfect, but it's impossible. Obviously, have a standard that's we try to meet in law enforcement. It's a high standard. It should be a high standard. And we're not always going to meet it. We're going to make mistakes, all of us.
Yeah, 100%. And it's never worth sacrificing those values to like not look bad in court or something like that. Own it if you made a mistake on paperwork and a case gets dismissed. I remember being in court one time and an officer gave testimony to a traffic stop because of a stop sign violation. And then the defendant got on the stand because he pled not guilty and he was representing himself. He got on the stand. He said, I was never in that intersection. I don't know what this officer's talking about. And the officer was sitting by the DA, and I could see he looked puzzled. But then all of a sudden, the officer got back on the stand, and he said, I am so sorry. I was thinking about a completely different stop. And this is what really happened at this stop with this gentleman. And the other one was something I was thinking of, and I apologize. And the judge said, okay, not guilty. But that officer's values were admirable because he got up there.
Situations like that, again, I hope it displays a level of character that everyone strives for.
Let's move on to something that officers do every shift, particularly if you're on patrol. Every single shift, you're going to communicate with people. And in my opinion, you just can't say, well, I get along with people. In my opinion, it's like other forms of training where you just got to keep learning about it. But for the most part, respect, empathy, I think those go a long way.
Yeah, I think you said it. It's respect, right? It's respect not only for the people you talk to, but respect for yourself. If you don't have any respect for yourself, how can you show respect to other people, right?
Oh, yeah, good point.
And with that comes you have to have confidence in your own skills and abilities, right? You have to have the confidence that giving respect to someone else is not taking away from your own respect, right? We talk about big form of communication. We're talking about dealing with people that their job as perhaps a career criminal is to outsmart you, to outskill you, to scare you, put fear in you, scare you from investigating further, scare you from trying to go any further into their pockets or investigate their whatever situation's going on more. And it works, right? Intimidation works, especially for officers that are not either experienced or skilled enough or have the confidence in that they know what they're doing, you know what you're doing, you can give respect to the person you're dealing with, but you're not going to take my respect. And you earn that respect again through your competence. You earn it through knowing your job. You earn it through understanding the law and being confident in that when someone calls you out on it. And there's going to be plenty of people that will try to do that, right? They'll try to poke holes in what you're saying. They'll try to bait you into arguments and to into those embarrassing moments we've all seen all over social media where the emotions get raised and you say something that you shouldn't have said or you do something you shouldn't have said. You know, that's their game, that's their goal, right?
In addition to communication, I think this goes along the same lines of communication, or it can relate, is compassion. And this was something I struggled with early on in the career, where I would see domestic violence victims, not leave the situation entirely, and we're going back to the same house. month after month or a few times a year, and it's the same couple. And in my experience, it was mostly the males assaulting the females, and the females would keep going back. Well, I couldn't let the thought of she stays with him, why should I go? Or what, this is going to be the same thing. You lose that compassion if you're not careful.
Law enforcement, it's easy to get cynical, right? Because you're just
It is.
seeing the same kind of negative things every day, and particularly if you're seeing the same people that are involved, right? So it's hard to maintain that empathy for people. But we have to understand that, again, you talk to 99% of cops, and what they say is like, well, they got on the job to help people, right? And somewhere along the way, sometimes that gets beaten out of people. In some cases, understandably, right? That this is not an easy job.
No.
In some cases, I think we just lose that because it becomes kind of lose that purpose, right? I think in some ways it goes back to like this job is not about us. It's not about you. It's not about me. The profession has a mission. It has, I think, a very noble mission that doesn't require any one of us to be part of it. It's going to go on. It's going to be there whether you're there or I'm there, right? It's going to go long after we're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you truly want to make a difference, it's not about kind of creating a fake solution for people, or making people feel better. I think a lot of the stuff when we talked about like stuff that we see on social media, or the humanizing the badge and stuff like that, it sounds good, right? It sounds like that's what people want. They want us to know, we want them to know, hey, we're humans too. We have kids, we're parents and stuff like that. I don't think that's the issue. I don't think that's ever been the issue. I think they know we shouldn't insult people's intelligence. They know that police officers are human beings just like anyone else. What we need to focus
Let me
on.
interrupt you right there. So you mean that all these dancing videos are
I would wager to bet that a good criminal investigation that holds someone accountable for a crime they committed against a real victim is more impactful than any video you can put on social media.
Thank
Maybe
you.
that's crazy, right?
Thank you.
Maybe that's crazy.
The next one we have to talk about, because in my opinion, it's crucial, not only in like appearance, physical conditioning, which is also good for your mental health. It's paramount. So how did you manage physical conditioning? Because it does keep you like the 12-hour shifts, they're long. The working night shifts, it makes you tired. So how did you manage physical conditioning throughout your career?
Yeah, so in terms of like the physical fitness side, I've gotten out of shape, I've gotten back in shape. When I first started on the job, to rewind a little bit, when I really started getting into fitness, and again, not obsessively, but just as trying to train and get in shape back when I was in college. And that was the first time I really learned about weight training. I got to a point where I was in college and I was bored, and I was like, at the point I think I'm gonna enlist in the military, which I ended up going into the Air Force for about 5.5 years. And so at that point, it just became like a routine, right? Okay, I got to run, I got to, get in shape, whatever. And it never stopped. And, I don't certainly kill myself every day, but I do something every day to be fit. And, once you get into the job, especially, you have to understand that the bulk of your job's probably going to be sitting in a car
Yeah,
with
which
a
is
lot of
very
gear on.
damaging to your health, big time.
Very damaging. Yeah, and I remember one of the first things I did, and again, I don't know if this is where if there's any science to this, but I knew just in my mind, it really sucks to have all this weight on my hips, and I'm going to get it off as soon as possible. So I, transitioned to the outer carry and put everything on my vest that I could. The mobility, the agility that you need, getting in and out of the car is huge. Because whether you're making traffic stops or subjects, or you're responding to a call, right? You're going to have to get out of the car quickly.
Yeah, 100%. And there's going to be people at some point that run. There's going to be people who
Right.
you have to physically control. So not only should you be training defensive tactics, which is good for exercise as well, but I don't like it whenever officers don't have the mentality of this is a job in which at some point I'm going to have a certain level of athletic ability to protect the public or gain control of someone while placing them under arrest effectively and using the least amount of force possible, because I'm not going into panic mode because I'm out of shape and that kind of thing. So talking about physical, let's talk about mental now. When it comes to thinking on the job, I'm not a big fan of overthinking, because you can get into that analysis paralysis stage, but you do have to have like a level of critical thinking.
There's probably no profession that requires more critical thinking, especially at a moment's notice, than law enforcement. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the one thing I would say is, you have to maintain focus. I think that starts with physical health, eating right, but also sleep. I think sleep's a huge thing that we probably discount. And again, I think in law enforcement, we romanticize the lack of sleep. And when you're young, look, I've done it. We can do it. but it's not ideal. It's not optimal, right? And in some cases, we can't get around it, but it's one thing that I don't think we should romanticize that idea because again, it could mean the difference between you making the right decision and the wrong decision, and your ability to actually process things and do the critical thinking in the midst of it. Part of that, I think also with critical, when we talk about critical thinking, you have to have the experience to pull from to be able to make the right decisions, or at least make the best decision possible, right? I don't think there's ever a right decision, but there's the best decision with the information you have at the time. You got to get out there. You got to do the job, right? You have to build your case files. You have to build your file folders of experiences from which you can pull from on a daily basis to make at least the best decision possible.
What would you say when it comes to being observational?
So my course is called the Effective Street Patrol Handbook. It was actually created out of just a lot of feedback I was getting where a lot of people were reaching out to me and just saying, "Hey, like I see you talk about a lot of proactive policing type of stuff. I can't get to training, or I'm just trying to learn new things. Like, what do you have?" One of the main things I talk about it is just the ability to assess behavior, right? Which is as a cop, that's what you're doing all day long. It starts with that situational awareness that we all should have, the vigilance that you should have while you're on patrol, but also, okay, you're dealing with people. You need to be able to just assess people and their behavior and what it means. Not only to identify someone that's engaged in criminal activity, but identify someone that's potentially armed and dangerous and may attack somebody, may attack you, right? And if we can predict, if we can take that behavior, if we can assess it and process it in an effective way, we'll be able to make better decisions, and we'll be able to make decisions quicker and hopefully mitigate, the danger to ourselves and others.
One aspect we cannot go without mentioning is you're never going to know it all. I don't care if you've been on for, the longest I've heard someone serving was 60 something years. You're just not going to know it all. So what I say is those cops, and I've heard this phrase before, but it was definitely a mentality that I took where if I think I know it all, then I become a liability. So you got to continuously seek training. And my thing is communication training, legal training, crisis training, and tactics training. And you gotta stay up to date on policies and stuff like that, because even though the policy manuals are so long right now that you can't remember everything, certain things like use of force and chase policies, you got to stay sharp on it because you will be held accountable. So what do you have to say when it comes to aspects of training and how officers can capitalize on getting the effective training?
Yeah, always be a student, right? Always seek out additional training. The other thing too is like when we talk about, investigations and stuff, it's not a win-lose situation, right? If you go out and you observe someone displaying behavior that you think is suspicious, just because you go out and you follow up and you stop them and you find nothing going on, that doesn't mean you lost that situation, right? In fact, you gain the experience, and the only way you're going to gain that experience and validate that, in terms of like, behavior assessments that you're doing it right is by actually following up, like investigating and saying, "Hey, these are the observations I made. Am I right or am I wrong?" Right? Can I confirm my suspicions, my reasonable suspicion, or can I dispel it by further investigating? The more you do that, the better you get at it. And then you understand, okay, like I keep observing the same behavior and this is what keeps happening. I keep pulling guns off of people, right? When it comes to like, I truly think like you have to love police work to be great at it. And sometimes that means just finding what part of the job you love, right? Whether it's investigations or canine or training, like whatever it is you love, like lean into that, like find out what it is, because if you love it and you have a passion for it, you're going to automatically want to get better at it. You're going to automatically, want to put more effort into it than what you would otherwise. If you like hate you doing your job, you're probably not going to strive to like look for advanced training or try to get better at it. I mean, that's the reality. And again, this job isn't for everyone, but I think anyone that gets into it probably has an idea of like, hey, this is something I'd be truly interested in. Or once you get into it, at least find like, hey, like this sounds interesting, or I'm going to go try to do a temporary assignment here, and I really like it. And that's what I want to kind of pursue, right? When we look at the average cop, right? The average cop goes to the range twice a year, right? Reads case law maybe once a year when it's put in front of them at in-service, right?
At some
And just
tedious
kind of
in-service training where they drift off. I mean, I know I did. I
right,
was like,
right,
because the guy just read the law. It was so like I couldn't pay
right.
attention, and I was like, man, I'm going to have to do some things on my own here. And that's why
Yeah,
I was always glad that I worked in a busy district because we had to implement legal procedures regularly. So it wasn't as as perishable because we were utilizing it. But at the same time, we would pick each other's brains. I remember sometimes officers and I would pull up, we'd run scenarios by each other and talk about the legality behind them and stuff like that. So, yeah, but you're right that reading case law once a year, particularly at a very tedious course, that's not good.
Yeah, and it can, yeah, like a lot of it is tedious. The one thing I think what I kind of enjoyed about it was you can apply it immediately, right? You can read a case, and apply those, those learnings immediately. And the great thing is like a lot of people, if, again, like we talked about the average person doesn't do this, right? Even if you spend once a week just kind of spending 20-25 minutes reading some case law or just reading some different cases, like it's going to make you so much better. And again, it should make you love the job more because you have more knowledge to pull from. You have more confidence in what you're doing when you're on a stop, and you have these people that think they're lawyers and they're calling you out on stuff. And no. Like I actually just read this case law or whatever it is. It makes you feel good, man. It makes you feel confident, and it makes you feel confident in what you're doing. So in terms of training itself, again, I that's why I put my course out, because I was just getting a lot of feedback from people that were just looking for anything, right? And everyone there's the only thing that we can do is former cops and active cops can do is like try to transfer some knowledge. That's what we do in field training.
Yeah.
No one knows everything, and no one ever will know everything.
All right, last thing I want to have you cover is we're all human and there are dangerous situations that police officers get called to go to. For those who are new to it, if they feel that heart racing, feel a little bit nervous going to something, it's okay to be human. It's okay to have a natural level of fear. I know I did, but you've got to be able to focus and push through that lizard brain that would want you to flee. And you got to use that logical brain and say, no, I'm here to do a job, and keep going. But is there any advice you can give to someone if they have that healthy level of fear, but yet at the same time, they got to go through with their job performance and protect the public?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of the things we talked about, the physical, mental health, more than anything, right? If you put yourself in situations where you're prepared for that, particularly training, where you're in a situation where you feel that anxiety and that adrenaline, right? I think that's why it's so important to do like very dynamic training to combine like the physical fitness aspects with the shooting. Training martial arts is huge, right? If
Oh,
you've
yeah.
never rolled in jujitsu, just find someone it doesn't even have to be a black belt. Just find someone that's knows what they're doing. Spend 5 minutes rolling with them, and you will feel a new level of exertion physically, and you'll come away with it. We talk about, like, you see a lot of fights, and you talk about a lot of officers that are in these situations, like life or death fights that they're in. And sometimes they last maybe 30 to 60 seconds. And to them, it feels like it was 30 minutes, right? Because that's the exertion that they're putting out. That could happen any day. So
Yeah.
the only way to be prepared for that is to prepare every day, as much as you can.
All right. I hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously, there's a heck of a lot more we could have talked about, but these were some of the highlights, and we could have talked about them for hours. Look, considering that the learning never stops, go ahead and click right here for your next video, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care of yourself, and may God bless.